Good morning, y'all, and welcome back to the garden. So I had some videos stacked up and I haven't shot a video in over a week because it had just been so hot. I've been comparing it to like a rainforest. The humidity's been insane. I even got my camera out last weekend and it was so humid it continued to fog up and I couldn't actually shoot any video. But I want to show you how the garden made it through the heat wave. We had a few things crisp up, some hydrangeas a little bit, because I was trying to like limit my amount of drip irrigation last week and kind of let these plants just say, hey, we need to set down more roots to make it through these things. A lot of things are at least 2 years old in this garden. A lot of them are new though. All the annuals look great and made it through wonderfully, but let's turn the camera around and take a look at some things. So I do want to show you at the end, after we walk through the front, the hydrangea hedge at the back around the pool. It looks incredible. It's starting to bloom really well right now. But I did get in some ground covers and some other perennials that I've been planting, including some small, these are all plugs, and so there's some small like anemones and stuff. This one's, I think it's called 𝗍𝗍𝗧𝗦. I'm trying to fill spaces. Now a lot of these shrubs I've planted will eventually kind of fill the space, but I want to put down some ground covers around some things so I don't have to continuously mulch every year the entire bed, because that becomes very difficult when I have these many plants and to weave around them. But you can see my little lime punch hydrangeas got a little toasty on top there where it was just so hot and humid. It was wild. I don't remember a summer like this in a long time. But you can see all the annuals or the perennials that I cut back too, including this �11𝗠𝗏𝗠 Nepeta, have come back wonderfully from their pruning a few weeks ago. The annuals, this Campfire Marshmallow 𝗣𝗍𝗏𝗧 is still one of my favorite things. I did try the Campfire. It was a different name. It's a different species of 𝗣𝗍𝗏𝗧 though, and I'm not loving it. It's the yellow one. It's barely bloomed for me, and these over here, the Campfire Marshmallow, has just performed prolifically. I don't know that I've even fertilized these other than when I put them in the ground. So really a stunning performer for the garden. I'm also impressed with the Raise for Days 𝗍𝗍𝗏𝗍𝗑𝗧 back here. It's performed like an annual. It has so many blooms on it. It was planted, that was just planted in the spring, I think. I have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure I lost what I planted there. I planted a different variety over here. You can see it's variegated. And I think this one came in the spring and I planted those there to replace them because I lost a few of them. But really kind of beautiful, stunning plant there. Lots of nice, pretty stuff here. I don't know if I've showed you the Wicked Witch Coleus. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen it. But it's wild how big it's gotten, and it's just the end of July right now, or the first, let's see, today's August 2nd. So really crazy. It's covered up my light out here. Where's it at? It's in here. A few days ago you could still see the light, so it's still continuing to get massive, and I love it. I love this spot. This was originally supposed to be caladiums. I ended up not getting the caladiums, so I decided to stick the Wicked Witch Coleus there, but really beautiful performer. I've grown this in containers, hay racks on the patio or the porch before, but I've never grown it in the ground like this, I don't think. But it's loving this spot. It gets good, nice morning sun, probably still like a full sun location, probably maybe 6 hours, depending on the season, of course. So maybe 4 to 6, so maybe a part sun location. Because this is east facing, and so the shade from the house starts creeping over after lunch. But really wonderfully performing. Not a spot on them either. The pufferfish hydrangeas are looking good. I'm not sure that I showed these to you when I was looking at the hydrangea, or doing the hydrangea tour a few weeks ago. I think I completely forgot about them. I have so many in the garden, sometimes I just miss some here and there, but looking good. Still not getting any blooms out of the Tough Stuff Red mountain hydrangea from Proven Winners. This was one that was discontinued. I'm just thinking maybe it was discontinued because it wasn't as good a performer as some others. I don't know. We'll see how that one does. I'll leave it another year or so, and if I don't get any blooms next year, I will definitely remove it. because I need something there that's going to perform for me here at the front garden bed. All the chartreuse on the loose catmint has come back pretty well. Some a little slower than others, but there's no drip irrigation here in this specific spot. There is some over here, but so hopefully now that it's stopped raining quite as much, they'll be a little happier. We got the hibiscuses are blooming. It's kind of early in the morning, so they've not opened up yet. I did come through and plant some Ajuga to cover around in these spaces here between these Weigela. Ajuga can be pretty aggressive. And a few years ago, when I mentioned planting Ajuga in the last garden, I had someone just come in the comments and be like, "You'll regret planting Ajuga." And since that time, I've called those people the Ajuga police. Because if you're planting Ajuga, if you don't know that it spreads pretty prolifically, then that's not a good thing. But I'm trying to use it as a ground cover, and I want it to do exactly what it's supposed to do. So it will have to be pulled up and moved around the garden as needed as it spreads. Here in this garden, I found that it doesn't quite spread as prolifically as it did in some places in my other garden. I think it's just going to depend on where it is. I actually had I planted plugs last year in the back, and very few made it through this year. So I think those of you who may not grow in clay soil don't realize that some plants also just don't spread quite as quickly or grow quite as big just because they can't develop the root system fast enough or well enough to love the conditions that they're in as much as some other soil conditions. So we'll keep an eye on it. That one blooms pink. It's a pink variety. I can't remember the name off of it because I ordered it about a month ago. But I'm excited to have just ground covers in the garden. Less mulch for me, less cost for me, and less work for me. I also came through and planted some Verbena bonariensis. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It gets very tall and has tiny little purple blooms on it. And it's not a perennial necessarily, but it reseeds well. And so I'm hoping that if I got it in the ground now, it'll bloom enough this fall or this late summer. You can see it down here. I've kind of planted it little plugs there, that it will come back next year from seed throughout the garden, because it's a really nice filler for the garden because of its architectural type structure. I also got some Calaminthas that I planted in various spots in the garden. So there's a few here and there. Calamintha, although like a typical salvia type shape perennial, is a great ground cover because it just gets so big. I'll show you the one next to the roses over here as we get over here. I planted a year or so ago. I had a lot of it in my last garden. It will bloom for you all summer through fall. In my case, it's so prolifically blooming, I've never had to cut it back, and it gets pretty wide. So it's a very nice thing to kind of cover the ground early in the spring or early summer, and then it will keep that ground covered for the rest of the season. I just want to point out right quick this plant right here. This is a El Nino desert orchid. It was planted as a quart a year and a half ago. I guess the fall 2023. I stuck it here. I bought it from Great Garden Plants, I think. And it has grown. It's 6 foot tall this year. It's getting slightly taller than me. And it was less than a foot tall this year when it came up. I planted it here thinking that it would probably grow slow and would die back in our winters. The first season it did die back to the ground. I actually thought it was dead, and it came back a little late. And then this year it died about halfway down, so it was less than a foot tall, I think. But it's put on all that growth in a season. I'm going to move this in September to a different location because I didn't realize it was going to get quite that big every season, and if it doesn't die back completely here, it's going to be massive. I saw them in the Prune Winners Trial Gardens last year. Huge shrubs. So that one will go on the back of the property. And it's really beautiful. It has orchid-like blooms in the late summer. So they're just now starting to form. So stick around and I'll show you those when they do form. The Pinkberry blend Lantana is taking over everything. So beautiful though. really beautiful flowers. Let's get a close up here. There is a stormproof or Incredible stormproof in there. It's covering a little bit of the foliage. You can see it's putting on lots of new buds though. Look at all those new buds on the stormproof coming through. That's exciting because that was just a 1 gallon planted this spring. It did get a little burnt in the heat. Hydrangeas are probably going to burn for you their first year, despite how much drip or water you're able to give them, just because they need to get their roots established, and they are a shallow rooted plant, so it takes a while. Things are looking pretty good. There are some things in here, like I'd like to add some ground covers here, but I may put some things in there, but like there's another Incredible stormproof here, so that's going to fill that space and cover the ground eventually. A lot of things I'm kind of hedging on, waiting for them to grow to their full capacity before I start planting things around it, because I just don't want to have to invest and plant stuff now and move it later, or just invest and then let it the other stuff take over, but we'll see. So this is Calamintha Nepeta. It's a species Nepeta, but that was planted, I think I got that as maybe like a quart or a 1 gallon. That may have came from Great Garden Plants too, I don't remember. But I planted it last spring, I think, and you can see how massive it is. But the pollinators love it. There's bees all over it. It's a really amazing texture in the garden. You could potentially cut it and add it to little arrangements, mason jar arrangements in your home. But you can see how it just kind of spreads out and covers the ground and shades the light from the ground to reduce some weeds and weed competition. This 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 oregano is also great for that though too. You can see I planted those as 1 gallons this spring and how much they've spread out and filled in. The Prune Winners Rise Up Ember Rays Rose is a little bit out of control. I need to come through and clip off and prune up some of the branches. I've had a lot of viewers reach out to me on Instagram telling me that some photos of this rose have been on Prune Winners Direct's emails, and I think it's going out to some garden centers this season, and then it was also in an episode of Gardening Simplified. I sent my Prune Winners rep some photos of it I took in early summer when it was looking so nice on the trellis there, because I just enjoy like trialing these plants and want to give back to those companies that have given so much to me, and they were able to use those images, which is really nice to see online. And to see everyone who recognizes my garden just from a simple rose arbor on the front of my home. So I put some Calamintha right here too. I'm going to go after this video and finish planting some more of the plugs this morning. But I wanted to show you this rose. It's a little more aged than yesterday. But this is Loves Me, Loves Me Not that I got from Heirloom Roses in the spring. And I am shocked with how big this rose is already and how productive it has been. It's almost as big as some of the ones I planted last fall or last spring in the garden, and it's got a ton of more buds on it. So this must be a really prolific shrub rose. Some roses you get the genetics on them, they just like take a little longer to get settled. This was not one of them. This has been the best blooming one of any that I planted in the spring, and it's really stunning. And then I planted the Calamintha here to just provide some nice texture on this border as it grows in. Along with all the heat, we've had a lot of weeds pop up that I need to come through and pull as well. Not as many. I'm getting there and slowly getting them pulled, but I planted some Joe Pye weed and some other Ajuga and Calaminthas in here as well as some perennial geranium to start covering the ground. So I've got some geranium down here and then some back there. I think the variety is Bevins, and then I have another variety called Roseanne, which is really popular. Oh, look, a rabbit. Every time I come out here, this rabbit is back here. I've not noticed any damage on anything. You see right there. So as long as it's happy. There's lots of clover in my lawn, so I think they're pretty good about not bothering anything. So I don't mind them quite as much, but if I'd started to notice any damage, that would have been a problem. But they seem to be pretty friendly, so I don't have a problem with them. But I know they're devastating for some of y'all. All right, this is a good example of what happens when you purchase a 1-gallon shrub versus a 3-gallon shrub. So this is a 3-gallon stormproof, Incredible stormproof that I planted 2 weeks ago, maybe. And then all of the 1 gallons that I planted in spring, you saw how burnt they got from this latest heat wave that we had come through here. And these, although they're on drip irrigation, they weren't, like I said, I had cut the drip irrigation down a little bit. They had no issues at all. Not a single little bit of burnt on the blooms. So it's kind of just what you can expect. You can invest in smaller plants and get more, or you can invest in larger plants and maybe they'll perform and grow a little faster for you initially. All plants have a period where they just kind of sit there at the sleep stage of their first year, but you definitely will get more productivity from bigger root balls. And if you're at the garden center, sometimes it might be handy to just kind of turn the plant over, hold your hands under the stem, and pull the container off of it to see how that root ball is developed. I do that sometimes. Oftentimes you can tell. Some plants that are good to do that with are often Hydrangea arborescens. Not Hydrangea arborescens, Hydrangea macrophylla or big leaf hydrangeas, because sometimes they can take a while to get rooted. And depending on if it's a fresh batch of plants, the garden center should check to make sure they're rooted well, but sometimes one might get missed. So it's always good to do that. Do it very carefully, because if it's not rooted in, soil's going to fall everywhere. But you want to make sure you have a really good rooted in plant, and that will definitely help for establishing it in the garden. I also planted some calaminthas around these hydrangeas as well, because they do smell like mint. And that will help deter, along with the onions that I planted back there that I went over in one of my last videos talking about this space. All right, let's take a look at the Limelight prime hedged in that, and then I'm going to get out here and plant some more of those plugs. I would like to finish that up today so I can work on other random things in the garden tomorrow and get as much done before the heat wave comes back, it looks like sometime next week. Can't get away from it. And here we go. So we've already got some blushing going on. As I mentioned, these bloomed way later than I expected them to. This year, I expected them to bloom early June, start at least producing buds early June, mid-June. And we had such a cool spring, I think that put them back. These primes actually bloomed later than a lot of the other varieties that I saw like around town where I'm at. So not sure why. The blooms are also a little smaller, but you could potentially get bigger blooms on these. They'll get bigger blooms as they get more established too. But if you do more pruning and cut off the little stems, you will get bigger blooms because there's less energy going into those stems to produce buds on them. So this small growth in here could be cut off in the spring, and then you'd have bigger blooms but fewer blooms. That's just how that works. I like the way they look, and it's also a lot of work. If you remember my pruning video on these in the spring, the Limelight prime produces so many stems and has so much branching that it's really difficult to go in and individually prune it with the amount that I have here in this garden and around this hedge here. So there are a total of 36. It's like I've got some vineweed or morning glory or something I need to come through and pull out throughout this bed. That's been a little bit of a problem in this garden. Not terribly, but there are some things here and there. We've had a lot of rain too, a lot of heavy rain, so you can see how well they're holding up their blooms. There's some little bit of flopping on the lowest branches that are the thinnest, but overall, considering how much heavy rain we've had, they're doing really good holding up their stems, even though the stems aren't super big. So you can see how strong those are there. But overall, it's looking really good. I also didn't get as much upward growth as I was expecting this year on them. But like I said, weird year. So we still got, was it almost 3 months of growing that could be done. The biggest part of the growing in the spring is obviously over, but there's still time for them to put on some additional growth, and I won't cut them quite as hard as I did next year so we can get some more height on them. So the previous ones were planted as 5 gallons. These were planted as 1 gallons in the fall of 2023. So you can kind of see the difference there. These are reaching a comparable height. Definitely fewer blooms. They're probably about a foot shorter, maybe 2 foot in some cases than the others. But definitely not as many blooms as they're getting established. But they put on a lot more growth this year than they did last year. And I'm excited about that. So as we wrap up here, I just want to mention that I have also had an issue with what I think are budworms this year. I've treated with BT for budworms. I have never had a problem here in Southwest Ohio with budworms, but I came out earlier this week and I noticed that a Calibrachoa has had no blooms on it. There were no more new blooms coming on, and then I noticed some small caterpillars. So I sprayed the plant with BT about 3 or 4 days ago now, and I'm hoping it will rebound pretty quickly because it was a beautiful, it's the grapefruit, it's a double grapefruit, magic double grapefruit that's coming out next year. That's probably going to be one of my favorites to add to containers in the coming years, and I was really bummed that it just had no blooms on it. So I'll show you what this looked like a week ago, and this is what it looks like now. The foliage still looks incredible and they're holding up really well, but we've only got like a handful of blooms here. So it was literally covered up. I'm hoping that it comes back rather quickly. It's pushing some new growth here, but hopefully I need to spray it again. BT is organic, it's Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's a bacteria. So it is kind of stinky. That's a soil bacteria, I think, but when the caterpillars consume parts of the plant, it kills them. So that is kind of beneficial to spray on plants if you've got budworm damage, or I had my kale and some other lettuces getting very destroyed in the vegetable garden, and I sprayed some of that on there, completely got rid of them, and now they're putting on new leaves. So it may take another week to get buds on those, I hope, but it's something that I'll have to continuously spray for the rest of the season. I was really bummed when I noticed them because I just don't need something else to do in the garden and have to spray regularly. But it looks like I'm going to have to, at least for the rest of the season, if I want to continue to get blooms on these petunias and Calibrachoas, because they are clearly devastating. They weren't on everything. I have another plant here with the Supertunia Mini Vista storm. It's called Pink Cloud, and it still looks great. I did spray that plant though too, just to as a preventative to counteract any if they were on it. And you can see how good that one looks here still. Starting to split a little bit as it's starting to hang over the side, but these will fill in as it opens up, so no concerns there. So I'm hoping that all the plugs I planted yesterday and I'm going to be planting today, that we continue to get some rain throughout the season. It's kind of unusual that we've got as much rain as we have in July, but these plugs are not going to be on drip irrigation, so I'm hoping I don't have to come out here and hand water things throughout the season. We'll see. Hopefully it cooperates with me. But either way, thank y'all for joining me this morning on this video, and remember, be a light. Take care. Bye.